All right, welcome. And pull my block into my space here. Um, Black because it's going with my theme here, but I actually have some other colored ones and just didn't get them over to this space, this studio. So welcome. I'm Ingrid. If you haven't had any classes with me yet, I teach on Thursday a movement lab, so some Pilates, yoga, experimenting with functional movement. And on Sunday, I'll be doing the Pilates and strength. So I do a lot of strength stuff, which reminds me of tomorrow, I'll be doing some talking about the strength, how important it is for us, what it can actually do for us, what it doesn't do, and giving you some kind of my best, what I think are the best ones to do if you aren't able to come to a class a couple times a week to work with strength. So Pilates gives us a lot of that core strength. I also think it gives us a lot of strength when we're doing the whole body stuff, with the legs, the hips. But we don't end up doing like a ton of push-ups or really building muscle mass in some ways. So I really love how Pilates fine tunes. But it's been really helpful for me to make sure I'm getting in squats and other things like that for the other stuff I'm doing. So anyway, today we're going to work with the block. So hopefully you've got something like a block or a book or something you could use that would resemble a block and be not too heavy, and about this size. There were some suggestions about what you could do. Shoe boxes or those plastic boxes that are kind of similar in size might work pretty well. Although we will be standing on the block today too. So sometimes they work for some things and not for others. So yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to start with, and you can be seated or standing to do this first one. And I just have the chair for a couple of exercises that might be helpful for to have your hand on, but otherwise you won't really need a chair. So if you don't have one, come up to standing. If you have one, we're going to just start with a really nice, and again, we'll kind of see how this works to use the block because it's fairly narrow, right? So sometimes for some of these things, I like the band better, but if you have a block, it's kind of fun to play with a new thing. And what happens when we bring our hands overhead here is we have to bring the elbows in a little bit more, shoulders in a little bit more. So I'm just going to find my seat, take a breath, exhale, and I've got that block overhead. And so one thing we can do here with the block overhead is simply do the breathing. I feel it differently in my shoulders than I do if I don't have the block, because without the block, I'm probably a little bit further away with my hands. So it feels different. Taking a breath, sinking into your seat or your feet if you're standing. And then let's do a little bend of the elbows here, bringing the block behind the head and coming back up. Bring the block behind and back up. Breath and exhale. Breath and exhale. You could push into your block a little bit with your palms. That'll make it a little harder. Or you can just simply let this be, enough to hold the block. So how's that going? Do you feel something? I'm noticing that my elbows are kind of coming forward a little bit. It's not bad. Um, but it's kind of interesting to start with the elbows, as straight up as I can go, and how as I was getting tired, they were coming forward. So coming down with your block. Did you start to feel that in a couple spots? So block doesn't weigh very much, but I like how you can work with that. Okay, so let's take it to another one. I like to call this my server workout. I like to pretend I've got a platter here that I'm going to serve out. So my elbow comes into the body. Again, I just keep sinking into my seat, so I make sure feeling grounded too. So if you're standing, into your feet, a little softness in the knees, and we're going to take that outward and then back to the front, out and back. And again, this is another one where we could use an elastic. I can think about how we could be putting the elbows in at the sides using an elastic, just kind of a different prop to play around with. So, where are you feeling that? Can you pause here in this outward motion, elbow into the side? I mean, I'm not touching with my elbow, but that arm is coming in. And as I pause here, I can really start to feel some of the muscles that I'm wanting to engage. So I'm curious, where are you feeling that? And then come back to the front. And maybe I'll tell you on the other side, just to keep it a little bit exciting. Let's take it up and back down and rotate. I'm rotating my palm to take it up. Shoulder blade gets to go up. Shoulder blade gets to come down. If you did Colette's class, I think it was Tuesday I jumped in with her class, and she did a really some really cool shoulder things in that first 10 minutes of that class. So if you have access to the we use the elastic, but it made me think of some of these exercises I've done with the block. Let's take that out front and then back up. Down, out front. Kind of shoulder blade comes back in and then up. Get that nice movement. All the places our shoulder moves. And we could even start to take that forward, kind of in a swooping and then all the way open. Front, cross a little bit, all the way open. And then let's bring it in at the side and take it out. I'm going to squeeze a little bit as I bring it in. I'm going to squeeze. Still wondering, where should I be feeling it? No should, but is there a spot you're starting to feel that? One more time, up. And let's take it, let's see, your fingertips start to move this way. So if you can kind of mirror here, you can take a little bit of a side bend here as well, and down overhead. And I'm giving it not a lot of work in that side bend, but more of my arm, shoulder. Feeling that in my forearm quite a bit. Are you too? So get a nice little reach. Let's come down and let's bring that block down. Maybe shake it out a little bit. Okay. So unless we did that with 2 blocks at once, which really would probably challenge my brain, we got to do the other side. Well, let's start right here at the elbow at the side body. Maybe I'll turn to the side and taking that block out and in. And feeling the feet if you're standing, feeling your seat if you're seated. Like letting the legs really rest. This has been a lot of working with the shoulder. Squeezing a little bit, pausing a little bit in this back motion. Might give you kind of a clue as to where we're going or what muscle group you're kind of keying in on here. And then we took it up overhead, down, out in front. So we'll kind of sweep these together. We did a few more on the other side. I really want to get to all these fun exercises we can do with the block. Out, tuck the shoulder blade back in, and then it lifts. Out in front. Up. And then out in front, and we did a little sweep. Internal, it only goes so far. External or outward, we get that nice opening in the armpit. Forward. open, forward, open. I'm trying to do a few things today that I don't normally work with. I'm going to bring that in and out to the side with the block. There are a few things that I really love to pull in with the block in my weekly classes. So not always, but I'll mention that it can be nice to have one. Is the block my favorite prop? Probably not. But it is fun to keep things fresh and varied. I do need that in my practice, or I don't tend to want to come back maybe, right? So I love the elastic, I love the chair. So versatile to do different things, but I also need to mix it up. How's that feeling? Getting a little fatigued, drawing that elbow in here, squeeze out. Let's do 2 more. Okay, so you've been thinking, well, where is she feeling that? Or where might I be feeling that? Are you feeling a little bit around your shoulder blade? Or maybe even what I consider kind of back of the armpit? So when we pull in here and we're rotating, working with the rotation in the shoulder, and we're also kind of working with these muscles right back here. So if you're feeling it there, that's where I'm feeling it. Not that I don't feel it other places, so no problem. All right, now we're going to see about standing on the block. So may or may not be up your alley. You can do the same things that we're going to be doing standing on the floor. So another reason I've got my block here, or my chair here, just in case I want that for some stability. So just for fun, coming up on that block, 1 foot, and then I'm going to bend this standing knee a little bit so that when I take my toe out here, I can actually find some ground. So it might be a little bend for your knee there. And we're just going to do some work here with the block and rotating in the hip. So tapping out front, to the side and behind, to the side and out front. And I'm going to stand up because I've got a pretty high block. Some of the blocks are a little shorter. That might be actually better for this one, but it's really hard for me to reach the floor if I'm standing pretty straight. I can if I really reach my toe. So it depends how this is working for your body, right? If you need to bend a little bit more so you really get that contact with your toes. A little bit of work for the standing leg too then. Out and back, out and back. And you could simply take this one out as well, right? Do several to the front, several to the side, and several to the back. So different ways you could work with this. If you've had some hip work done, this is a really nice way, right, to kind of make sure things are getting nice and healed up and strong there, or to keep your hips nice and strong. Okay, I'm gonna go to the other side. Give that standing leg a little break. And then we'll do that same kind of circuit, front, side, back, side, front, side, back, side, front. Good. Let's do 3 out front. 3, 2, 1, and 3 to the side. 3. You can come back to your block. 2, 1. Those are really good. And then to the back. These are really good too. Try not to lean too far forward to, the foot only can go so far in that extension. Our hip only goes so far. All right, starting to feel that in my standing leg again. So kind of like that work. It feels a little different being on the block than maybe on the floor. All right, I'm gonna come back to my first side. And just because we have this little bit of space here with the block, we did this, gosh, so long ago in studio, it feels like it was a while. It can be nice to just let the hips swing. So I have my steady chair here, or maybe you've got your hand on a wall. I'm a little more tentative if I take my support away, my hand, but you can just let the hip get that nice free gravity feeling. And then if we wanted to, we could take that into a little more movement. And again, it's not so much this swinging leg, it's going to be more this leg you're standing on that gets a little work, and come into almost like that warrior three position for in the yoga practices where the leg is back behind. Keep your knee and toes pointing downward. And you could hold it there a little bit. I have a little micro bend in this knee, so I'm not completely straight in that leg. And you could see about balancing there. The more your leg comes up, likely the more your chest and thoracic comes, your head comes downward or parallel. Good. All right, and then step down. So again, where are you feeling that? In that leg that was swinging or more in the standing? Let's go to that other side and do a little swinging there. So I'm kind of going back and forth just to give that standing leg a little break. Not imperative. We could have stayed with one side. Let's swing a little bit here. This week on Thursday, I kind of promised to do a little bit of hip stuff. So here we are already working with that. Planning a week out. So excited about it already. Just getting that nice swing. And let your leg just feel heavy there. Like your femur could kind of drop out a little bit out of that hip socket. Good. And then let's take it a little slower and just see where we're at. Taking that leg back behind you. If you wanted to in the front, the knee could come up and then straighten out back here. Come up, straighten out. Come up. Again, I usually teach this hinge right on the floor, so you don't have to be on a block, but it's nice for the swinging part, isn't it? Knee up, back. Maybe see about a balanced one. A little less stable here. Let's see. Knee pointing down, hips if I can, the hip pelvic crest pointing down, and then coming back to standing and back to the floor. All right, I'm gonna move my chair out of the way. And we're gonna come all the way down onto your back. And then let's keep some work going with the legs here. I'm actually gonna put the block down by my feet. We'll see how this goes. It could be kind of nice to have two blocks, or there's a possibility you might have both of your heels on the block here, and that might be fine. You could see where it might be nice to have your feet a little bit further apart or just on the outside edges of the block then. So I'm gonna come down and we're gonna start with our feet off the block. So I want you to get the feeling of it first. And then we'll just kind of check it out. Breath, breath. Okay, so a little check-in. How are you feeling? How's the body today? And then let's take one leg in. And I'm just letting that leg be lifted, the knee come in comfortably over my hip. So you might have your knee here, that's fine. It might come in further, that's fine. And then I'm gonna find the just right spot. You'll probably find you make an adjustment with this bottom leg, bottom foot. And we're gonna do some push up here. So I'm trying to lift the hips with this one leg. Now, if that feels like a lot anywhere in the body, if it just feels like a lot, then you might not lift as high So just coming off the mat, that's just fine. You're getting those muscles engaged here. And then come down. So I just want you to get that feeling on each side. So bridge pose is always both feet, right? But here we get to give ourselves a little more what's going on each side. So bring that other leg in, relax the low back to start. And then as you're ready, press down through your foot and start to lift up and down. And if you get 5 to 7, that's good. All right, so now we're going to be curious. What happens if we put our foot on the block? So since we're doing one side, then the other, I'm going to go to my first side. I'm going to put the block there, maybe a little bit further out. Again, so I'm just curious, what happens if I do this now with my foot on a block? Easier or harder? I'm going to find out. Bring that knee in, foot on the block, or maybe for you, it feels better to have your heel on the block. And give that a try. Does it work to put the whole foot? Does it need to be closer? Is it easier to lift the hips? Harder? And then come down. So I did about the same, 5 or 7, something like that. Gonna give myself a little break. And then let's try the other side. So my guess is the further out that block is, the less I'm gonna be able to want to have my toes down. So I might use my heel a little more. The closer it is in, I probably can put that whole foot down. All right, bringing the leg in, relaxing the low back, and using that effort of pressing down through your foot to lift up. And then come down and rest. Okay, so where did you try? Was the block closer to you and your whole foot was on? Or was the block a little bit further away? So my guess is if the block is closer to you, foot down, you're gonna have a little bit easier time. As we've practiced before, we've taken our foot, even without the block, further and further away. Maybe both feet have been down and our heels are down, and we lift here into like an elongated bridge. It's a little harder. So that's my guess. That's my guess for you. All right. So let's take this. I'm going to just see if I can bring my block up closer to me. I'm going to need it for the upper body, but let's start with just coming into our mini crunch. So let's make sure those muscles are online and ready to go. Letting your head rest into your hands. Exhale, lifting the head, feeling the upper spine come into your mat and then peel away, finding your way up. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. All right, and then coming back down. And let's do that one more time. Lifting the head, letting the head be supported by the hands, and then rolling up, finding those muscles. If you want to, give them a little challenge. You could take your arms alongside the body. You could bring the knees up. Keeping the hands behind the head if you'd like. Then bringing the body back down. So there's a lot to explore With the block, again, we took the block overhead when we started, and there's a lot to explore here with that overhead movement and this connection in the ribs. We worked a little bit in that with my class yesterday, but we didn't do this one. And I'm not gonna belabor it too much because I think some of you probably have done this one where you're kind of taking the block overhead, breathing, and watching what's going on in the ribs. So as we go overhead, the ribs like to kind of come forward or come upward, and yet we're using our muscles. So the more we take that lever overhead, the more abdominal engagement we need. Exhaling, drawing the ribs in, inhaling, maybe the hands coming back up. So really nice work for this connection of shoulders, get this movement, and ribs, pull down and in. And then bring the block right to your ribs. And we're gonna see if we can grab the block with our elbows. So sometimes I want this block to be just a little bit longer. This would be one of those times. So if you've got a shoebox, might be, depending on the size of your feet, might be a nicer width here to try. So if this seems like I can't even get it, Ingrid, then you can continue to use your hands. And we'll kind of have to make some adjustments. So what I'm going to do is grab that block with my elbows. And then squeezing the block, bringing the elbows over my shoulders best I can. Same activity. Let's just start to take my elbows a little more overhead. I'm going to bring the block toward my forehead, watching the ribs and coming back. And you could set it back down, or you can continue that movement. Squeezing, moving. So that creating a little bit of interest somewhere in the body. Ribs pull down as my arms go over. And then I'm going to take a little break for my arms. One more little interesting thing that you can do here. So we had that movement of squeezing and adding the movement. You can also squeeze, and I'll see if I can show this. I'm going to turn this way a little bit. Squeezing, and then I'm going to see if I can squeeze, continue to squeeze, but take, oh, it's moving a little bit more. I know what I did last time. Block was this way. And so I'm squeezing at the elbows and yet moving my hands away from each other a little bit without dropping the block. So elbows over the shoulders, squeezing the block, and my hands are kind of moving away from each other. So my forearms don't really hold the block anymore, but does anybody else feel quite a bit of work with that? Yeah, so there's just these little shoulder things that are kind of fun. So if you didn't get it, email me, text me, we'll get it figured out and I can show you if this feels like really great shoulder stuff for you. Okay, let's see where we're headed. Yeah, let's come to onto the belly actually. Yes, let's do that. So I'm going to come full circle here onto my stomach. And let's just have the block nearby on one side. Bringing the hands to near the chest to start. Taking the breath in and relaxing. Get our body in a little different orientation. And let's just work with locust a little bit, lifting the nose and chin as you keep that the back of the neck nice and long. Breath. So swan or locust, whichever you're most familiar with here. And then let's take one arm and reach it out in front. And then take that same arm and take it back behind you, palm up. And take that arm forward and take it through, palm up. And bring the hand back, and let's try the other side. Reaching forward, again, we get these nice shoulder movements, connecting into the arm. Reach forward, palm down. However you get that arm back, you're gonna end up with the palm upward. And just kind of notice. And so we can do that same movement. If you need to come down, nose down toward the floor a little bit and rest the upper back, the neck, go for that. Go ahead and rest it. And then we'll see about, can we do this with the block? Maybe we don't take it out in front. We can. What happens if I take that black back and I'm kind of doing that platter hand again? And then I want to take it out in front. I'm going to grab onto it, hold it. And I might swing out to the front, or you might see about, my block is so big here, it's a little harder to swing through close to the body. But I can really feel that platter. This block is a little heavy, so I can really feel that nice pressing upward connection into my shoulder. And then I'm going to pass it to the other side. One arm maybe is taking a break, the other arm doing some work. You could see about taking that forward, swinging out to the side, holding, pausing here in that platter alongside the body. Coming forward, holding my block, finding a way backward here, platter. All right, need a little break. So take the hands there, put your block down. And then let's just take the arms alongside the body, both at once now. And imagine you have a block on both hands. And how you felt that engagement with the block there. Lifting through the nose, through the crown of the head, not your nose, but your nose lifts. Lifting through the crown of the head, long back of the neck. And those blocks with a little bit of weight in them. I don't know how much mine weighed, probably not even a pound, but they're a little heavy and they just give me that tactile feeling. So let's bring the hands there and go ahead and press up. And you can round the spine, crawl the knees in, let the head go. Okay, one more on your belly, forgot to do. And I wanted to, this one's really nice for rotator cuff, so I don't want to skip it. So on the belly, you're going to have the block on one side, and there are different heights of the block. I've got mine as this one as low as it'll go, but you might find you need to go lower, and you could use a stack of blankets. You could use just a shorter book or block. You're going to make a light fist and put that on your block, and your head can kind of rest in the center here on the other hand, on your forearm. And we're going to work with that elbow down. We're going to see if we can lift up off of our block. Lift the forearm. So I could actually use this to be a little lower. You could start from the floor and then kind of work your way up. Or if you have one of those 2-inch blocks, that might be perfect. Like for me, I could start here. I didn't feel like I had a lot of movement, but you can continue to move, up in your height that you start with. It's I just don't have any much more movement here than this. So it's pretty small, but very active movement. You feeling that a little bit? That work for the shoulder is pretty impressive if I get to about 10, 12. And all I'm moving is maybe an inch, inch and a half away from my block. If I'm doing from the floor, I've got a little, I got about 3-5 inches here that I get to move then. All right, let that one rest and try the other side. I'm going to start with the floor. I just feel so much better if I can get a little movement first. And lifting, rotating. And then I might try after 5 here. 3, 4, 5. I might try my block, see if I can do 5 there. This side, I've got much less movement. I'm very, at this height, it's a little harder for me to lift. So again, if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, my block, it's not really helpful here. I'm not getting that nice movement. It does challenge you to see how, if you can work on this and get it to, get it stronger, get it to work a little bit better. To have that height and figure out how high you're starting and how far you're going. But for me, for sure, a very different feeling side to side. And different range of motion. All right, I'll let that rest. I'm gonna bring the hands back in. And now we're gonna find our way back up to hands and knees. You can go ahead and stretch back if you'd like. If you'd like to throw in a downward dog or a child's pose. For me, it just felt good to kind of stretch out the shoulders a little bit. All right, let's see where we're at. Is this class really supposed to be shorter? Oh man, we have lots of good stuff here to do. Let's see where we're going to go next. Since we are having so much fun, we did quite a bit of shoulders. Let's see if we can find a little bit more for the legs here. So on hands and knees, I'm going to have to put these into my next classes now that I've brought them all together. You're going to see if you can find a place for your block between your calf and your hamstring. You're going to see if you can squeeze it in. So here, the big block is pretty handy because we don't have to be able to bend our knee as far. So the skinnier your thing is, it might be a little more challenging. And I'm going to see if I can lift that one up, keep it squeezing, reach through the heel, and do little pushes upward. And then keep that squeeze on your block. I did about 12 little pulses, and then I'm going to come down. So again, might do a few more of those or a few repetitions if I were working on my strength stuff. Maybe these will come into some of the strength classes. Go ahead and balance on the other side, squeeze your block, and do some kicks up here. Remember how in hinges we did the knee points down, toes point down. There's actually almost a little bit of internal rotation of your femur here so that we're not kicking outward with it. Let's kick straight. Let's have that knee straight down and heel straight up. Good. Okay. We'll stay with that. And let's come into seated. And there's a couple of ways to work with the hip flexors that I love to do. I've done these a few times. You can have your block at its low point, so it's at its lowest, or you can have it a little bit higher. You'll know in a moment. You're going to start with your hands behind you and your block kind of, you could really do both feet here at once if you wanted to, but you can also do one at a time. So with my hands behind me, I'm just going to work with lifting my leg over that block. So with this angle, my hands behind me, you can see it's not too challenging for me. I could probably go higher in the block and go up and down. If I want more challenge, I'm going to sit up a little bit taller, my fingertips kind of keeping me up and a little up more upright. Oh yeah, and now that's a bigger challenge. So up and over. You actually feel that in the quad, in the hip flexors. So it is targeting that area. And just because our hip flexors can tend to overwork in some areas doesn't mean we don't want them to be able to work at all. So we're going to switch to the other side. Again, might do more repetitions at some point, but the taller you sit up, the harder it is. The harder it is, the taller your block is. So those are the ways to do a little bit of modifying here. Whew. So feeling that. One other way to use the block, and when we were on hands and knees, we didn't put the block on the sacrum. That's another one that's kind of fun to do some movements and see if you can keep your block there. But what about the block behind you now? And you're lifting your leg up and over. I'm not lifting it over anything or very high now because I have that block there, right? But it can kind of be fun to see what you normally would do is kind of sink back into that block. And I can't make mine fall over. It must be on the sticky mat, but I'm definitely leaning into my block at this point to lift my leg a little higher. So leg's still working. I'm gonna go ahead and shake it out. Good. All right, let's take that block between the knees. And I know there's a ton we could do with between the knees. I've tried to stay with some things I thought might be new for you. But obviously, those of us that have been practicing with Scott for a while, we did a lot of use the block, squeeze the knees in to get this inner thigh and low belly on. So you can use that here with some of the Pilates work, of course. Maybe you don't want that blocked so wide that it's as wide as it goes. Kind of play around with that. Where do you want that? Pulling back with the belly, squeezing. And we could work with kind of crawling down the legs with some support or with the hands out and having that support really between the knees and coming back up, and then one more time coming back down. And then give it a rest if you need to. So go ahead and hold on, let your legs completely rest. Still have the block there, but I'm not squeezing. And online, I saw somebody call this boat in a storm. So they actually took their feet off with the knees squeezing the block. We'll kind of see how it goes. We'll give it a little step by step here. So squeezing here. And then your arm could come out to the side. If you wanted to, you could do a little more balance. And in this case, it's really nice to have that block to give you that stability to keep the knees going forward, not shifting, knees squeezing the block. I'm getting a nice warm workout here. And then go ahead and hang on there. All right. Let's take this into one last kind of final great place to use the block and send you on your way. So I'm just going to use something for my head here. Coming to your side, drawing the knees in. I'm going to use that block like we've had the platter. So whatever way it works to kind of hold your block on your palm. Kind of like to be able to grab it on the skinny side here. Let your ribs drop down. And then take that block up, let your head turn and give it that nice platter. Holding the block as a platter. And then you're going to continue to hold that block as a platter as you bend your elbow, as your chest opens, and as you start to rotate here so that you can hold that platter out back behind you. You might check out if there's an angle for your hand back here. So you may default to kind of a T, but there might be an angle back here that feels like a really nice way to get into the arms a little bit. Into the armpit, chest, some people call it. Breath. Oh, one more breath. And then bringing that arm up, grabbing onto your block. Sometimes blocks fall. It's good. It's all good. Let your ribs fall down. Good. And then coming to your other side. I'm just switching because I can see you better then. So knees draw in. Taking that hand up, getting your platter ready. And then remember that our twist really starts here in the chest. Center of the chest opening, knees stay. And then your arm can kind of investigate, holding that platter back there. Breathing. And maybe what angle your arm is at. So if you can see your video, and my arm isn't straight out to the side here, that's fine, but there's not as much to get at as there is here for me. Here I start to feel, and I don't want to feel too like a too strain or anything. And the higher I come up, the better, or the less it lessens a little bit. But both of these directions for me, pretty tight. I've maybe been doing a lot more strength work, not as much of this. It's kind of nice for the lymph that's in the armpit, for that pec minor tension that we tend to have. That's underneath all of this. So a little bend in the elbow, feeling that weight of your platter. And then bringing the platter back up, rolling back onto your side, and go ahead and put your block down. And then go ahead and roll onto your back. And you could simply be on the back here and not do any more with the block. Or if you wanted, you could do a little bridge lift and support your back, your sacrum with the block. Then I don't want my pillow so much though. So I come take that away and just have the hips lifted. And if you wanted, you could lift your feet. You might hear me with the big exhales. So go ahead and take those breaths in and out. And as you're ready, lift the hips again. Let the spine come back down to the floor, the pelvis come back down. Notice how you feel before you start to come up. But when you're ready, go ahead and give that body a roll to the side. And then using your arms and hands, kind of press yourself up. And a couple breaths in seated. Yeah, good. So yeah, I think the Friday flip is supposed to be a little shorter. I have a hard time with shorter than 55. I've had to really work at that to get it under an hour. So thanks for sticking with me. And I hope you found kind of some of this information fun. If you have any questions, please let me know. There's more where that came from, so I'll probably be integrating it in my next few classes, next few weeks, because my list over here was a few more things to play around with. So
I thought it was great. You could go as long as you want, Ingrid.
oh, good. Yeah, I just don't want to be like, oh, sorry, everybody's
Yeah.
gonna leave because they thought it was still 9:45. So it's okay.
That
Okay.
was
Well, I
so
appreciate
great.
it. Thank you.
I love, my shoulders feel such ease. It was
Oh,
great.
good, good. I got to see who's talking here. Sometimes I
It was
can't tell.
Cece. I don't have my video on.
Oh, Cece. Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, thanks for the comment. Thank you, Maxie and Judy and Juanita. Thank you.